Hi folks, and welcome to the Meaningful Money Podcast. This is session number 409. This is the podcast dedicated to helping you put your finances in order. My name is Pete Matthew, and I'm going to share with you everything you need to know and everything you need to do to secure your financial future. I'm here to help you make sense of money. Here we are once again. Now, it's going to look a little bit different. Might even sound a little bit different because I'm in a non-sound treated room, at least not yet. But this will be my new studio, and this is the first video that's being shot here. Looks okay to me from this point of view, but we'll soon see. We've even got a second camera over there. Hello. Now, today, I'm joined by a new entrant to the world of financial creators, shall we say. A gentleman called George Agan. Now, George has begun a new YouTube channel, and I think it's going to be a really fantastic addition to the increasing number of voices who are educating the world about finance online. Not going to lie, George's production values are so good. It's definitely been a factor in me wanting to up my game in the new studio here. So I'm looking forward to chatting with George. As usual, after the main body of the show, I'll look at a review that's been left, announce what we're going to be talking about next week. Before all of that, as ever, remember, this podcast continues to be brought to you with the help of my friends at 7 Investment Management. They've been helping me out here on Meaningful Money for ages, since the spring of 2011, so coming 10 years, which is just incredible. Really, a lot of this stuff around me that makes this show sound so good and look so good is thanks to them. So definitely check out what they're up to. They're at 7im.co.uk. That's the number 7im.co.uk. Now, there is a lot of crap online, if you'll forgive me. Sorry if you're listening to this with kids in the car. It seems to be an increasing number of financial charlatans as well, offering stock tips and so-called advice. And of course, there's no regulatory oversight of that, which is a concern. George and I talk about that in our conversation today, and a lot more besides, so I hope you enjoy it. Remember, notes and links from the show are at the show notes, which is the only link you need to remember, meaningfulmoney.tv/session409. That's meaningfulmoney.tv/session409. Here's my conversation with George Agan. Well, this is a real pleasure to have George Agan, creator of Principles of Personal Finance, to the Meaningful Money Podcast. George, how you doing, bud?
I'm good, thanks. How are you, Pete?
Yeah, I'm well. This is a real treat, actually. So George reached out to me a few weeks ago to let me know about a project that he's begun, which I'm really excited about. I mentioned it in my weekly Meaningful Digest newsletter a week ago or a week before last or something. But, I get a whole bunch of stuff sent to me quite often via email. And occasionally things really, really stand out. And George's email and the contents of it really did. So, George, it's great to have you here, man. Thank you for joining me. So give us your backstory, man. How did you sort of become your chartered financial planner now? So, like me, which is great. How did you get into this? And perhaps more importantly, why did you choose this career path?
Yeah, sure. So it's a bit of an odd one, and actually, Pete, not really that dissimilar to yourself in some elements. So I studied business and economics, and actually, when I was a bit younger, one of my big passions was music. So while I'd studied that, I thought, well, do you know what? I'm gonna give music a bit of a go. So I just thought I'll get a job. Now I think your first job was with McDonald's, wasn't it? Your one. Yeah. So in the infinite wisdom of young me, I went for the worst hotel company in the UK and started my career there. So, I was pursuing music, doing my thing, telling people why the hotel rooms didn't have windows. And then at some point, I was fortunate enough to get the opportunity to do it full time. So there was a management company who represented bands like Muse and the Pogues who said, we can take you full time. So I got a bit of time to do that. It didn't end up resulting to anything apart from a couple of years in a dark basement in Manchester and a few tours. But I then found myself sort of, back into the job market and kind of rekindling my interest in that I'd had before in business economics and finance. And I was just fortunate enough when I was kind of trying to find the right place career-wise to, get a job, my first job with a chartered financial planners. And I took the traditional route from there, really. So I started as an administrator. I then worked my way up through the exams, did paraplanning, then a technician role, which is sort of just like a technical role, and then advisor and chartered financial planner. So, I guess kind of my answer to the why, unfortunately, is sort of the stock answer, to be truthful, which is, the why as I fell into, which is the cliche. But, hopefully as we move forward, we'll get a bit more awareness about the profession. And, we're starting to already see signs as people potentially looking at that from college, university, and hopefully that will change.
Yeah, definitely. It is turning slowly. How do you think we can sort of accelerate that shift to people actually thinking, well, maybe financial planning is a career I want to pursue rather than fall into? How do you think we can sort of nudge people in that direction?
I think it's got to come from probably the professionals as far as awareness, firstly, and Pete, obviously you've been listening to the podcast for years, and you do great work in that because you kind of show a bit of insight into, actually what we do. Because I think most people, if you ask someone on the street what they think a financial planner does, I think most people would probably give the stock answer of, look at the stock market and, and all that sort of stuff, it is associated, but it's not really sort of the bulk of the job, because you don't really manage money, you manage people. And I think the more we can get a bit more awareness that this profession is actually about people, I think people will be more willing to engage who maybe have been turned off to it thinking it's purely a mathematical vocation, which it isn't really.
No, for sure. It's quite a process. I think there's quite a lot to still to be done on that regard. But you're a sort of a new entrant into the sort of creating a canon of work to try and make this whole thing a lot more attractive and hopefully bring some more people in. But I get questions all the time. Every week I get emails from people, wanting to pursue becoming a financial advisor. So much so that I created a video, it's probably a couple of years ago now, and it's still by far my most watched video, I think. It's actually ties, I think, between that and the J.L. Collins interview. But, that's one of my most watched videos, and it's how to become a financial advisor. So that's the sort of practical stuff on exams and career paths and stuff like that. But so firstly, I suppose I've got to say, would you recommend it, given that you're a relatively new entrant? You're sort of 5 years in the industry? And would you have any thoughts as to what the best route might be? If you sort of say today, right, I would like to become a financial advisor, firstly, would you recommend it? And secondly, what would you suggest might be a good way in?
So as far as recommendation, yeah, I would. I absolutely fell in love with the profession. One of the reasons that's why I kind of launched the project, was trying to give a bit of insight into actually what we do. But look, it is incredible. You do take a really privileged place in people's lives. You work with families, you give them freedom, security, and work together. It's a real partnership. And, make no mistake, the exams are really boring, but what kind of gets you out of bed in the morning. I had a client recently who'd been working nights for, years. And, with a bit of interaction and a couple of changes to the plans, we're able to, put them in a position where they're able to move off nights, go part-time, and then look to retire in a couple of years. And, Brilliant. When you see things like that, yes, the exams are boring, but it really is the kind of stuff that gets you out of bed in the morning, because you know that all that work through the exams and the technicals has kind of got you to that point, and it's it's incredibly rewarding. But as far as the routes, so I guess I did the standard route, and the standard route, I guess, in the profession is probably that if you want to sort of start at the entry point, that would be administration. You then go do the exams while you're learning on the job, and then do paraplanning, which is sort of the report writing for advisors. And then you kind of get a bit of a feel about how advisors need to think, and you start to get a bit more of a introduction to the technicals, and ideally with the right firm, you then start to get more client interaction, and then move on to an advisor. And the goal should be ideally to get to chartered, because that's sort of the top qualification. That's how I did it, and it worked really well for me, because you're learning on the job.
Yeah.
And also the thing that we don't really talk about enough is that how the exams actually aren't that expensive. If you think that a year at university is 30 grand or something, or something like that, I think all my exams to chartered were something like 5 grand overall. If you just want to buy the exams to do, 15, 20, it might have been a bit slightly more, but you can do it that way. A lot of employers will help and fund through that as well, which is great. Another alternative is that I'm a member of Next Gen Planners, which is a great community of sort of forward-thinking planners, and they have structured programs where they do a lot more interactive teaching. So I think it's a question about how much experience you have, how much support you want, really, which is the key thing. But there are lots of great training programs out there.
Yeah, there are. Good shout on Next Gen. I always send people there. It is a superb community. It's Adam and Ryan and Annette particularly have founded it and have done amazing work there. Finding a decent firm is the hard bit, I think. Certainly that's my perception, because it's still a pretty broad church. There's still some very sort of transactional advisors working in what you could say is the old school way. I don't want to say there's anything bad about that necessarily, but I do think its days are numbered. The days of selling investments and pensions and basically sitting on them and not really doing a very good proactive job, certainly not doing any financial planning. I do think there's still, to some extent, a need for that, but I think it'll be in decline. And then obviously you've got the forward-thinking financial planning firms, those that are continually looking at better ways to look after clients and their finances and marry the two together. Is there any sort of simple hacks to find the right firm, or is it a bit of a sort of trial and error job?
I think I want to give kind of a realistic answer to this, because you're right. I kind of, like yourself, like I kind of, I want to use the phrase financial planner as opposed to financial advisor, because quite pretentiously, I think there's a difference. But I think it would be unrealistic for me to say, in an ideal world, you would be working with a firm who is incredibly forward thinking, who knows that transactional work probably isn't where it's at long term, and would really embrace the planning aspect. That is the ideal. But as we know in life, various geographical reasons, personal reasons, all the rest of it, you sometimes have to adapt and potentially go to a firm who might, for example, not be the exact place you want to be right now, but see it as a long-term plan. What I would probably say, though, is that the most important thing to recognize about that standing point, the reason why people at Next Gen Planners are great, is that really you can be the change you want to see if you're proactive about it. So I'd probably reframe that. Instead of being like, don't get in the industry unless you work with these, the perfect firm. I would say, have the ideal of what you want financial planning to look like going forward. Try and listen to the right people. And then the bottom line is because of the structure of the advice community, the advice community in general is relatively old right now. I think the average age of an advisor is something like 50 or something like that, maybe older. Least, yeah. So there's a real opportunity for new entrants to be the change, basically. So that's what I'd say as a positive thing.
I'm smirking to myself a little bit because I used to glory in that statistic. But another 5 years, I'll be 50. So suddenly I find myself at the sort of elder statesman end of the industry, which is a little bit worrying. But George, you mentioned this project that you've embarked upon earlier on, and I sort of introduced you as the creator of Principles Personal Finance, and that is a project. But before you tell us about that and I ask you about it, when I sent you the questions in advance, you wrote back and said, how about we play this audio file? Okay, so I'm going to play it live now, and you and I are going to react. So can you just tell us who this is, though? I mean, you don't have to name names, but sort of
I have no idea.
Probably better not. But how you found it?
So this is quite an infamous clip, which is probably why it's got so many views. It's got over 1 million, maybe even 2, of people on TikTok. So TikTok, for those who don't know, is a social media platform where people do short, snippet videos. And for some reason, one of the things that's really taken off in TikTok is financial influencers, I think is probably the word.
God help us all.
God help us all. Probably the clip explains the issue more than I can.
Let me play it then, and we'll you'll hear it at the same time as I will, so we'll sort of react to it. But then we'll go from there. But here we go. Brace yourselves.
So, how do we make money from home? For starters, this is not a sponsored video. We just get this question all the time, and honestly, the answer is really simple.
So basically, I just trade stocks on an app called Robinhood, which I left a link in our bio if you want to check it out. It's free to download, free to sign up. They actually give you a free stock, so they're paying you to sign up. But again, not sponsored. And I know trading sounds intimidating. Here's my strategy in a nutshell. I see a stock going up and I buy it, and I just watch it until it stops going up, and then I sell it, and I do that over and over, and it pays for our whole lifestyle. If you're wondering how much you can make doing this, in this month I turned about 400 into 14,000. And in this month, I turned less than 1,000 into 20,000.
And honestly, my favorite part about this isn't even the amount of money you can make, but just the fact that we don't have to go to a 9-to-5 job.
Yeah, we can focus on things that we actually enjoy doing. So if you have friends that want to make money from home, you can tag them or send them a link. Or if you make money this way, share it in the comments so other people know there's more people doing this now.
Yeah, be afraid. Be very afraid. You just buy stuff that's going up, and when it stops going up, you sell it again. It's really
what are we even doing here, Pete?
I know,
what's
honestly.
the point of us? Why don't we just do that? We've just been wasting our time.
So the question that sort of prompted you to send me this was, with this new project, what was the itch that you were trying to scratch? And that kind of was your answer. So do you want to elaborate?
Yeah, so it was kind of one of the things. So, as social media platforms, whatever you want to think of them, I know we're both kind of Gary Vee fans, so we're probably skewed a little bit biased on this, but whatever you think about them, social media platforms have had the power to pretty much shape the democracy of the last, 5-10 years. So we kind of underestimate them at our peril, really, because they clearly are hugely influencing people in their decisions. And one of the reasons, for the project is that I was really quite surprised by the lack of sort of qualified voices out there. And that's not to kind of be disrespectful. Some really good voices who maybe don't have the qualifications who are also doing great work. But there is really, when you consider how many advisors there are out there, there isn't really that many who are trying to engage people on those financial education issues. And the reason why I believe that's an issue is that, you just have to listen to that clip to recognize the state of the problem, really. Because the bit I love about that clip is a bit at the start where it's like, it's not an affiliate link. It's not an affiliate link. it's like, but you get a free stock. They're basically paying. And I was like, you charlatan. Yeah, so anyway, but also on a personal note, so I wanted to do something good, hopefully for financial education. I also thought, I do sort of think that as planners going forward, because of issues like that, not just issues like that, but also the fact that, there's probably a way to go as far as teaching financial education in schools. I sort of think it's part of our professional obligation going forward to try and do a little bit more. We've all had that moment, even in the profession. I had it where you go, I wish I was taught that in school. And because the magic with investing is in the time, it's in the compounding. Learning early is really important. There's one of my videos is called 10 Things Schools Don't Teach You About Money. And then point 5 is just a dive into, why starting earlier is better than finishing strong. And it's basically just saying, this is why investing early makes more sense. So, having it being really influenced by your work, Pete, and by Andy's work, I was sort of an example of what the impact it can have on people's lives, because I'm doing this project because I was influenced by both of you guys. So I just saw it as ticking a lot of boxes, doing something good and hopefully making a positive impact.
So obviously the current state of, financial influences is worrying enough, but there isn't enough people doing what we are doing. It's something I've been sort of aching for, really, for as long as I've been doing Meaningful Money. Every single person who came to me and said, look, I'm thinking of doing this, I've been like, yes, please, for goodness sake, jump on and start educating, because there's such a desperate need for it. And people sometimes sort of tiptoe and say, oh, obviously I'm not going to copy what you're doing. I'm like, please do. Do you know what I mean? It's just the more of us, the better, and the more different kinds of voices, different colors, races, orientations. And do you know what I mean? We need a rainbow of voices in this stuff to meet as many different communities as possible. But there are headwinds for people wanting to impart their financial knowledge, primarily fear of compliance. So particularly for regulated advisors like you and me, we have compliance rules we need to live by. And also, if you're employed, of course, it might be that your company doesn't like it. And so that can be a headwind if you're an employed regulated advisor, you're working for somebody else, or under somebody else's regulatory auspices. It might be that you have to check absolutely every single thing that you put out with them first. And so there are headwinds, I think, but none of those are insurmountable, I don't think, are they?
No, it's something I feel really kind of strongly about, because I think intent really matters. I think, I want to say compliance to an essential role in all of our professions. That they're why we're able to stay in business. And the people got to realize is that the thing with working with a regulated individual is it is a good thing, these systems and controls in place. Right. It protects you. You know what I mean? It's you should see it as a positive thing. But I also think about the profession. We, including the regulator, including compliance professionals, we have to also rethink sometimes the extent of our own actions, including sometimes maybe some of the strings attached. And the rules, just to be clear, that financial education is not a regulated activity unless you're stupid enough to give a real personal recommendation to somebody. You should, theoretically, there's nothing to fear. But I think the problem that we're having is that sometimes, because of the formalities that are so involved in our kind of structured and regulated process, it's just being seen as a barrier to entry for people where it's just too much to pass. And they just, because the nature of any sort of content creation anyway is that it's very time consuming. It does take a long time. And I think these sort of things are the things that we maybe need to push back and have a bit of a rethink about, because ultimately, look, the end game is, us as a compliance regulator, we all actually want the same thing, which is to make sure that people are better informed about their finances and that we're getting better outcomes.
For sure. It just needs to be a bit more joined up, doesn't it, really? And,
yes.
Sort of end-to-end thought through, and, some good work can be done. So tell me about the project, man. So you had the idea. You're very kind enough to say that myself and Andy have been part of the inspiration for that. So what are you doing, and how do you see it sort of developing over time?
Yeah, sure. So I'm doing, so the website is principlespersonalfinance.co.uk, but it is a video project predominantly. I do articles as well, and there's a mailing list you can sign up to on the website if you'd like that, as well as the videos. But it's predominantly video based, because that was just my choice of format. So it's a video a week, and I'm trying to not only do sort of financial education topics, but I'm trying to do it in the most engaging way as possible. One of the taglines for the project is that the only way we can engage more people in financial planning is to make financial planning more engaging, and that's kind of the idea. So it's kind of weekly videos which are tapping into everything from behavioral finance, trying to use things like certain stories and putting that together in relatively short 10-minute segment videos, which can be digested over time and hopefully will at least have a bit of an impact on how you think about money and what you want to do with it.
So why video? You said it's just that's what you wanted to do, but was there a thought process behind that? Is it just an attraction to that format, or an aversion to any others, or what?
I was like, I can't compete with Pete and Andy. No, I didn't. To be honest, I think I was always more interested in video. I don't know why. It was just something, I'd always been watching, kind of things on YouTube. And I think the tip is you probably focus on the content. You're probably going to be better at the content you consume the most, I think, is a generalization.
Yeah,
I think that's a fair thing to say.
Comment, yeah.
So if you absolutely love podcasts, and you should probably do a podcast. If you absolutely love writing, you should consider a blog. If you absolutely love video, you should probably do a video. And for me, it was as simple as that. I digest a lot of podcasts, and I like reading articles and so forth. But I would say the thing that I do to sort of turn off is probably more sort of the YouTube video side, and where I get my information from. And also, I guess I kind of knew it would be a little bit more difficult to do that format. So that was something I felt was a bit of a challenge and interesting, that I wanted to give it a go, really.
Yeah, and I always say on YouTube, you either need to be very different or very, very good. I think to really, I'm certainly, the sort of stratospheric creators on YouTube, you Peter McKinnon's and, that's, the other ones don't sort of come to mind, but even like Ali Abdaal here in the UK,
yeah,
has hit massive numbers very quickly. because he's very, very good at what he does. McKinnon is obviously a genius filmmaker, and his presentation of video is just next level. Casey Neistat was much the same, although he had a very different approach. And for him, it was just the daily consistency, and he's consistent in edit and stuff. So you've got to be very good, I think, or very different. And you are very good, mate. I tell you, the videos that I've watched so far, you're definitely next level, and making me just a teeny little bit jealous, I have to say. You're right, actually, because I mean, my first love is video. I did sort of nearly 300 videos before I did a single podcast. But of course, they were all piece-to-camera videos, like this one is now. And then started really listening and really loving podcasts. And that was the trigger for me to say, you know what, I think I need to make this a podcast. And that's what's blown up for me, obviously. It's been the medium which has been most successful for me. And yet I always come back to video. I consume more video than anything else. Certainly consume more YouTube than I do podcasts these days. And so my sort of move is increasingly towards video. So we're sort of working on that now, and there'll be more video in 2021. But it's time consuming, man. So, I mean, did you learn this stuff yourself? Do you edit yourself? Do you outsource or what?
Yeah. So no, I just learned it myself. But there are things you can. Like I paid for a couple of subscriptions where, I just basically last year just decided to throw myself into, learning the software. I use kind of Premiere Pro and After Effects, which are sort of like the professional level ones, or the ones that a lot of people who do these videos use. And it was just trial and error and watching stuff online. And you can get subscriptions where you get some sort of like templated stuff as far as the videos. So you can then, if you can, one of the books I was reading actually, it was on the show, wasn't it? It was Todd Tresidder, the leverage equation. Yeah. So what you can do is you can get subscriptions for things which have these sort of pre-made templates, and if you can combine that with getting to a good level yourself as far as editing, your creative universe sort of expands almost exponentially, because you can then sort of leverage the fact that these other people are creating really useful templates, and you can quickly make yourself look a lot better than you are in reality.
It's easier than you might think, but still requires definitely some effort and some consistency and some learning. Are you judging me a little bit because I'm a Final Cut Pro editor?
No, not at all.
Although actually my good mate Cal, who does most of the editing, he's definitely a Premiere Pro and After Effects whiz, so for which I'm very grateful. I wonder, firstly, I'd be interested to know it's what you see Principles Personal Finance becoming in, say, 5 years' time. What you would like it to become. And then just to expand on that, George, and how you see content creation in our space developing. For example, do you see sort of bigger companies getting into it more and things like that? So I know that's two questions in one. But so first, how do you see your own project proceeding?
So I think with any of these sort of online projects, so at the start of the year, I just set myself a target where I was like, I just need to do one video a week every week for this year, and and obviously do what I can to see if I can get it around. But if anything, that's the most important goal, because I think sometimes people prejudge what's going to happen a little bit too much and not understand that. Ali Abdullah, I think, mentions, it's a flywheel. You have to take it takes a long time to get momentum. You shouldn't expect any sort of results, for quite some time. So for me, my main aim for this year was just to be consistent and do work which I thought would be useful and impactful. And that was literally the only thing I wanted to do, because that's the only thing I could control, as opposed to having something else which is set by perception or anything like that. As far as where I'd like to see it go, do you know what? As far as an end goal, if it could help bring forward a few more people who are qualified to think that actually you can do it, then I would see that as a great result, because I think it's something I really enjoy doing. That's something I hope can be positive. But I think we talk about sort of financial literacy, and we talk about and these are sort of massive issues that we have to solve. And as much as we would like, no matter how long, we have both been doing any work, or, as much as an impact it hopefully makes on people's lives, it's only going to really impact a very small amount of people, because the issue is so big. So we need sort of an all of the above approach. And if anything, sort of the meaningful money experience that I've had has been, which is why I've kind of, one of the reasons why I set set principles. If I can hopefully inspire a couple of financial planners to maybe consider doing it, and they maybe get 100 or 1,000 people watching their stuff, it can compound over time. So for me, you know, I'd see that as a really good result. As far as the big firms, it's difficult to say, but I am going to make a Gary V sort of prediction. So I'm going to an outlandish prediction, which we can maybe roll back the clock in 5 years and tell me how wrong I was. I could totally see in 3 to 5 years in interviews for firms, they'll be asking planners, what's your content marketing look like, or what's your content strategy look like? And the simple reason why I think that's the case is I think that the thing that, and firms are sort of cottoning onto it, but the reason why personal this content matters is because people connect with people, not corporations. We all know that, you know. Gary Vee has a quote, you know, David beats Goliath every day when David starts acting like David. And I think that's true, you know, like everyone's seen those incredibly, and the data backs this up, by the way, you know, I think it's something like 10 times more engagement from personal content online than it is corporate content. Yeah, because people want to connect with people, not corporations. And I think, forget financial planning, but any sort of business where at the end of the day, people working with you is built on trust and authenticity and, you know, showing competency in a world which is moving more and more online. And, you know, Pete, how many times have you had people speak to you on the phone and say, it feels like I know you already?
Oh, man.
You know?
Yeah, thousands of times now. Yeah, certainly.
Yeah. And you know, in a profession where trust is key, where, you know, how better way to establish it than being like, well, actually, you know, I'm dedicating my life to trying to improve financial education. Here's 2 years of content that you can go and watch if you don't believe me. You know, it seems like it makes sense.
Yeah, I think that's a very wise prediction, George. I think you'll be proved right there. I mean, as just a sort of indicator to that, so my eldest daughter is 21. She's doing a zoology degree, so she's third and final year. So obviously focus starts to turn to careers and stuff like that. And they've been encouraged to start blogs, start shooting and editing videos and stuff like that as a sort of like a buy-in to the next round of an interview process. It's like, okay, actually you do care about this stuff enough to produce content in your spare time, and so, you know, that will look good, it will play well for you. And so I can totally see that coming to the fore in our space as well. One last question, George, before we just get where people can find out more about you. But one of my sort of the things that keeps me awake at night is, how do we get this stuff in front of people who don't know they need to know it? All right, because we don't teach this stuff in school, so that's, you know, fairly evident. Most people, I think, get to the point where they're almost at the end of themselves. As Dave Ramsey says, they get sick and tired of feeling sick and tired about the state of their finances or whatever, and so they seek help or they seek education. But a lot of people don't know that they need to know this stuff, and they'll never get to the point of despair and have to pick themselves up, but they could be doing so much better. Is there a way that we can, you know, reach folks who don't know they need to know this stuff?
Yes, I think there is. And the answer is potentially in front of us. But it requires a rebrand of what financial education is. Because if you think about the FIRE movement, you know, financial independence, retire early, the reason why that has movement beyond anything corporate is because it taps into something. It's a lifestyle movement, basically. It's about how you control your finances is how you live your life, basically. And it's not actually really that much to do with finances. It's to do with you having control to make your own choices about how you live your life. You know, there's a great quote from a guy called Brian Portnoy, which says, true wealth is the ability to underwrite a meaningful life. And I think not only the financial planning firms of the future, but also if we are going to engage people in financial planning, we need to basically get to the point where there is ideally enough content, or it is evident to people that actually sort of financial education, which sounds super boring, is actually about freedom. It's about you having your path to your own life and ultimately controlling your own time, which is your most valuable asset. And the minute we can help people associate that with finances and financial planning, not the man from the Pru, we'll be on to something that will be able to connect to people in a more meaningful way, and actually make them want to look at their finances as opposed to chasing a thing, telling them how to fill in, the tax and all the rest of it.
Certainly. Very cool. Good answer. And I'm sure you're right, George. And your project is definitely going to be a part of that, man. So how can folks find out more about what you're up to?
Yeah, sure. So the website is principlespersonalfinance.co.uk, just all one word. And you can sign up to the mailing list. But also probably the best place to find me is if you just go on YouTube, put Principles Personal Finance, scroll down, because, I'm not going to, I might surprise us right now. So scroll down for a while. It'll be there. It's clear. Please do subscribe. I'm doing a video a week. So yeah, we found that.
Definitely. I'll obviously make sure there's links to the website and directly to the YouTube channel on there. And definitely do please subscribe, folks. If you subscribe to me, definitely subscribe to George, because you'll get fantastic content, no question. And I'm super excited for this project, man. I think it's going to be great. And I'll be keeping a very close eye, and no doubt we'll speak again. But George, thank you so much for joining me today, mate.
Thanks.
Okay. There you go. Hope you enjoyed it. I really liked George, got on really well with him. He was kind enough to reach out to say that we'd been something of an inspiration to him, but I'm really excited to see what he's going to bring to the table. The world desperately needs decent information about this subject. We don't teach it in schools. Many people don't have any kind of financial education from home. So the more of this information we can get out, the better, and he's really going to do great work. So his website and YouTube channel are linked in the notes, of course. Definitely give him a follow. Subscribe to him on YouTube. He's not going to disappoint. He's got this target, as you heard, to do a video a week in 2021. So that's going to be a lot of really great information. Did I mention I was a little bit jealous of his editing chops? That'll make me up my game. Okay, here's a review from FP Ireland. Consistently excellent. Thank you very much. I've been listening to Pete for many years, and his ability to communicate complex financial planning issues in such a down-to-earth, easily understandable way is enviable. I work in the financial planning area in Ireland and constantly hear myself quote Pete when trying to explain something to a client. Keep up the great work, Pete. FP Ireland, thank you so much. I really appreciate you leaving a review. Happy to have helped a little bit. Keep up the great work. If you like what you're hearing, just as FP Ireland did, you can leave me a rating or review. Go to meaningfulmoney.tv/love. That really helps others to hear about the show, to subscribe. It keeps the show near the top of the rankings, keeps it visible. Okay, next time, going to be talking about, to the always good value, Abraham Okasanya. Abraham is creator of Timeline app, which is an app I use constantly at work for helping people plan their retirement spending patterns, investment approach. And Abraham has written a white paper highlighting some really interesting findings from a good half a dozen studies from around the world about how people spend money in retirement. It's a really important subject. So looking forward to bringing you that next week. But that is it for this week. And this top and tail of the show, at least in the new space. So I hope it's looking and sounding okay to you. But I hope the show was helpful. Thanks again to George for his time. Any comments or questions, go to the show notes, meaningfulmoney.tv/session409. Thank you so much for joining me. I'll talk to you next week. Cheers.